Greetings on the occasion of Gurpurb and Kartik Purnima. On behalf of Namita Gokhale, William Dalrymple, and all my colleagues at Teamwork Arts, welcome back to JLF's Brave New World special series, Voices of Faith, which we began broadcasting a few weeks ago. Our magazine partner for this series is The Week, Journalism with a Human Touch. Our session today celebrates Gurpurb with Guru Nanak, Ode to the Cosmos, Madan Gopal Singh, and Navtej Sarna in conversation, presented by the Kamini and Vindi Banga Family Trust. Guru Nanak's inclusive vision fearlessly challenged the social conventions of the time and unleashed a spirit of ceaseless wonder at the spectacle of creation. And these visions conceived his journeys as pilgrimage without defined destinations. In Guru Nanak's Ode to Cosmos, the word he used for the cosmic energy is bhav khandana, which can be interpreted in two ways. Bhav from the Sanskrit root bhu, earth therefore still and static. But bhava is that which is becoming, evolving, while khandana is that which disintegrates and dissolves. Lyricist, screenwriter, and academic Madan Gopal Singh is a member of the musical ensemble Chaar Yaar. Writer and diplomat Navtej Sarna's book, The Book of Nanak, traces the chronology of Nanak's life. This session commemorates Guru Nanak's 551st birthday. Madan Gopal Singh retired from Delhi University after teaching English literature for 42 years. He has since been traveling all over the world, giving music performances and conducting workshops in various universities and colleges. He has performed extensively as a singer in some of the most prestigious festivals of the world, including the Festival of India at Brussels, Alchemy, Jahan-e-Khusru Festival at the South Bank Centre, London, the Smithsonian Silk Route Folk Festival, Washington, World Music Festival, Trondheim, Norway, and so on. He's composed music for the celebrated Pakistani film Khamosh Pani, and last year for the Irfan Khan starrer Song of the Scorpion. Among the films scripted by him are Rasa Yatra on the life of Pandit Mallikarjun Mansoor, Name of a River on the life of the iconic Bengali filmmaker Ritvik Ghatak, and he also wrote the dialogues and lyrics for Kissa, Khamosh Pani, and Song of the Scorpion. Navtej Sarna is the author of the novels The Exile and We Want Lovers Like That, and the short story collection Winter Evenings. His non-fiction works include The Book of Nanak, Second Thoughts, and Indians at Herod's Gate, as well as two translations, Zafarnama and Savage Harvest. He served as an Indian diplomat for nearly 4 decades in places as diverse as Moscow and Warsaw, Thimphu, and Tehran. He held several critical appointments, including as India's Foreign Office spokesperson, Ambassador to Israel, High Commissioner to the United Kingdoms, Secretary to the Government of India, and he retired from diplomatic service in 2018 as India's Ambassador to the United States. As all of you remember, our sessions that have been broadcast till now are available on our Facebook page, JLF Litfest, and on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF. And of course, you can find all the sessions from JLF North America, which is Boulder, Colorado, Houston, New York, and from Toronto on JLF Litfest. There were some fabulous sessions. So in case you missed some of them, please do go and log on. Please do ask questions and comment by typing it into the comment section below. And we will pose these to Navtej later in the evening today. Ladies and gentlemen, Guru Nanak, Ode to the Cosmos, Madan Gopal Singh, and Navtej Sarna in conversation, presented by the Kamini and Vindi Banga Family Trust. Madanji, Navtej, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanjoy, and absolutely privileged, Madan Gopalji, to be with you on this very auspicious day, the 551st birth anniversary of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Not just the founder of the Sikh faith, but one of the most accomplished spiritual masters who ever walked on this earth. His message is not confined to one community or even to one country, but is a message for entire humanity, a message, as Sanjoy said, of inclusive humanity, a message of equality, a message of compassion, of love, and the righteous way to live. All these things are part of the hymns that are contained nearly 1,000 of his hymns are contained today in the Guru Granth Sahib. And I think I would, over the next half an hour, we would try to explore some of his teachings, philosophy, travels, and so on. But I think the best way I can think of starting this session is to request you to intone for us, sing for us the Mool Mantra, which is the essential credo of all his teachings.
Thank you, Virji. And with your permission, I begin greeting all our viewers and all our friends on this auspicious day, and beginning with the Mool Mantra. Ik ਓਂਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਜਪ ਆਦ ਸਚ जुगाद सच है भी सच नानक होसे भी सच.
Thank you. Wonderful. Just to put that verse in English in a very inadequate translation. There is but one God, true is his name, the Creator, fearless, without rancor, timeless, unborn, self-existent. By God's grace he is known. Meditate on him. He was true in the beginning, in the primal time. O Nanak, true he is and will be hereafter.
Wow.
This Mool Mantra, this verse, which is seen as the creed, the essential credo of all Guru Nanak's teachings, appears on top of the Japji, the morning prayer, for all the readers of the Guru Granth Sahib, and that forms the essential philosophy of Guru Sahib's teachings. Would you agree, Madanji?
I absolutely agree. And this insistence on the idea of truth and its all pervasive sort of energy is something that inspires us all the time, but it's also existentially a very central principle of living, which has been proposed not by just the first guru who takes the lead, but by the gurus that follow. So this becomes a very, very central principle, living by the truth. And this defines our existence. This defines our obeisance. This also defines the politics of our being.
And the essential idea of a transcendental reality, the supreme power, which is so supreme that mortal beings cannot even comprehend it.
Absolutely.
So in a way, this is a very different way of understanding creation. It really builds on all the things which Guru Nanak, when he was born in what is known as the Dark Ages in 1469, was it was a time which was very difficult for the ordinary people. But this was his intellectual inheritance was there, because there was the Bhakti movement, there were the Sufis, there were people who were looking inwards. But he took all that and then took it to a different level, and an individual inspiration of an entire way of life, of an entire community, of this equality and compassion. And you and I and a million others have heard these stories about how he, right from his childhood, I mean, we have heard of at our grandmother's knees these stories. I'd love you to hear whether you agree to that, and whether you had similar experiences as I had.
Absolutely the same experiences. And I think this is how the idea of the community is formed. And this idea of community is a shared idea which is woven around these narratives, which are very, very instructive, which are, which are also sort of, very open. And my earlier romance, which has never, ever disappeared, has to do with the romance that these journeys opened up, these stories opened up for us on reflective journeys, on actual physical journeys. And it is in this context that I would request you, therefore, to speak a little about his journeys.
Well, absolutely, I'd love to. The Janam Sakhis are basically what we rely upon as ideas of Guru Nanak's own life. And these were hagiographic writings which were written several decades after Guru Nanak passed on. And these were these stories which talked of his travels, talked of his experiences, right from his childhood days. So when you put all these together, this plus the only other detail that you have about his own biography is from Bhai Gurdas's War, the first War, the first ballad, so to speak. Because in Guru Nanak's own writings, you don't find anything about himself, because he saw himself as a messenger. He saw himself as a witness. And whatever he wrote, he says he wrote it, he was speaking as if it was coming from God. As he says, Jaise mein aaye khasam ki bani, tesra kani gyan ve lalo. As the Lord's words come to me, so I speak. So in his own writings, you won't find anything else. But Bhai Gurdas tells us, that he traveled in all directions. He says, Babe tare char chak, Nonkant Prithvi Sacha Toa, that he went to all 9 regions of the world. I mean, there is no agreement on, there are general agreement as to where all he went, but whether it was 3 Udasis, but more commonly believed it was 4 Udasis.
True.
So he went in 4 different directions. He went east, he went south, he went north, and finally he went west. So when he went east, he went as far as Assam and Bengal and Orissa. South, he went to present-day Sri Lanka. North, he traveled all over Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, as we call it today, Himachal, deep into Tibet, into the snowy mountains. And he came back, and on the 4th journey, he traveled west, right up to Mecca, Medina. And each of these journeys, as you know, is connected to stories, teachings. Now, his journeys were not meant to go and criticize people or meant to go and convert them to a particular point of view. His journeys were a kind of spiritual experience by which he went into dialogue. He went into dialogue with religious leaders, with thinkers, with common people, with kings, and he tried to bring out the right way of worship, the right way of understanding creation, the emptiness of ritual, the falsehood that was being conducted by the priestly classes who had an unholy hold on common people. So his journeys, along with his musician friend, the Muslim Rababi Mardana, in all different directions, and as he journeyed, he would sing the Bani that came to him. And, this is how his message went. For more than 20 years, Guru Nanak traveled in 4 directions, and we can come to some of the stories during his journeys which illustrate his teachings. Perhaps you would like to take that.
Well, 2 things about these journeys that have always fascinated me, and I think it is even more relevant in our times today than it ever was before, are that these are very significant, if I may put it like that, reverse journeys. We had narratives of the Sufis traveling from Central Asia, traveling from Baghdad, traveling from Sistan, Marband, Afghanistan, also traveling from Turkey and coming to the what was then known as South Asia, at least northern part of India. This is a and earlier we had the Chinese travelers coming to India, and these were pursuits of knowledge, pursuit of knowing the other. But in this case, here is one saint, one savant, one seer, who is traveling in the company of his childhood friend, a lifelong abiding friend who's a Muslim and from a different sort of religious order. And the 2 of them, the metaphoric implication of this, significance of this is so saturated, and it is so deeply moving today, that much of the work that is happening in that, there is the musical component, which is largely to do with the rabab playing of Bhai Mardana. So these 2 things, that these are, I look at these as reverse journeys, that, here is, and I do not know of any other instance where such a journey at such a large scale has actually occurred. That was one point. And the other point, which is, deeply fascinated me, is the desire to forever create what I call the midway language. That I reach you in a way in which I will accept part of your language, I will surrender part of my language, and that is how we will create a language which is in the middle. And he keeps on creating that throughout. And there are so many dialects and so many actually, formal languages, structured languages that he is engaging with and creating genres of poetry and the genres of new linguistic sort of expressions, which I find absolutely fascinating. I mean, whether it is something in Persian, or a poem like Yak Arz Guftam Peshto Dargosh Kun Kartar, or it is something which is close to one of the dialects from this region called Mithila, Gaganamay Thal Ravichanda Deepak Banay Tarika Mandal Janak Moti. So that kind of, reaching out, that kind of, and he is an incessant seeker who is continuously engaged in dialogue. I would want to invite your attention for a comment, because I'm making maybe a very, let's say, enthusiastic sort of, creating an enthusiastic, euphoric metaphor. But I think that he is the first cultural envoy. I mean, since you have been in the foreign service, so he is, in a manner of speaking, the first creative cultural envoy from South Asia to many parts of the world.
Well, that's a wonderful concept, because but in the sense that he was a most intrepid traveler, if you see, and if envoys of those days were very intrepid travelers, but he was an amazingly intrepid traveler. For instance, several sources talk about the dress that he wore as a traveler, so that he could not be identified with any sect. You know, he wore a long sort of robe like a darwish, like a Sufi darwish, but of a rust color, which was of the Hindu sannyasi. He wore a Sufi kalandar cap and tied a short turban over it. He wore a white belt around, cloth belt like a Sufi on his waist, and some even say that he wore a necklace of bones and sandals which never matched each other. So in the, and when he went north, for instance, to Tibet and the cold, he wore sandals of leather and covered his body with rope against the cold. So there are things like this. And when he actually went to Medina, then Makkah, Medina, he was dressed like a Haji. And so these were his ways of getting his message across, getting access to different countries. And of course, he had several experiences on the way. Which I think some of them really illustrate his teachings. I think if you permit, the journey to the north, for instance, when he went to what is Mount Kailash today, or Mount Sumer, Mount Kailash, he went, and there he is, in the snows, had this meeting with 84 Siddhs. Siddhs were these ancient sages who had gone away, who had renounced life and were meditating in the Himalayan caves and were seekers of knowledge and were very wise people. And they were all the descendants of the Nath yogis, of Gorakhnath, who came from spiritual descent of Machendranath. And the Nath yogis had a very strong hold on northern India at that time. So he had this entire debate, which that experience, plus a later meeting with the Siddhs in Punjab, in Achal near Batala, he put together in a 73-verse Bani, which is contained in the Guru Granth Sahib. It's called Siddh Gosht. It is 73 verses in Ramkali Rag. And it is all in the question of dialogue. Now, one thing that really stands out from this experience and this Bani is his entire sense of humility. There is politeness in the dialogue. There is no criticism. There is a question, there is an answer, there is praise for each other. And it is really a beautifully sort of written poem, but essentially it brings out one of his most important aspects of his philosophy, that this world is real. This creation is the creation by the supreme creator. So you cannot reject it. You have to affirm it. You have to be part of it. And you have to do it the right way. So he criticized renunciation. He was against any form of external piety. But he said, you must live in this world and be there. Now, for instance, in Bhai Gurdas has written about this, and I have it here. And he says, Bhai Gurdas, when he gives the version of this meeting, he says, the Siddhas express amazement at seeing Nanak. O youthful one, what power brings you to these heights? Who is it that you worship? And he answers, the eternal Lord alone. And then they ask him how the world was faring below. He made no secret of what he felt. He told them that darkness, sin, and injustice had taken over the world. Corruption was rampant. The fence itself had begun to eat the crop. The wise Siddhs had escaped into remote caves and mountains. Who would then redeem the world? In the words of Bhai Gurdas, Siddh chape baithe parvati, kono jagat ko par utare. So if the wise men have all left the world and gone into the mountainous caves, then who is going to save the world? And so this dialogue carries on. And then one of the really accomplished Siddhs, Charpat, who's one of the two who's named in the Bani, Charpat asks him that, it's not possible to live in that world. and get salvation. It is such a terrible world. It's a dirty world. How do I, save my soul by living in that world? And his answer, I have attempted a translation. It says, Charpat says, O Nanak, the detached one, answer me truly. Nanak, the one who asks that himself knows, what can I answer him? Truly speaking, how can I answer you, you who think that he has already reached the yonder shore? Then he answers him, like the lotus is unaffected in water, a duck swimming against the current is dry.
Wow.
Similarly, with the mind on the divine utterances and repeating his name, we cross the terrible ocean of the world. So like a lotus unaffected by the dirty water surrounding it, or by the duck swimming against the current and yet not being wet. So
Oh,
this is
wonderful.
the message.
How wonderful. The two things strike me in this. And one is the idea of being totally unafraid, fearless, completely. So the idea of nirpao, which actually defines, who we are finally. In fact, in a way, distinguishes him from the rest of the reformist poets of the time, in the sense that he is not afraid to take on so he's not just a reformer, he is more than that. He is in fact actively intervening and questioning in a way which is no roundabout way. It is a direct way of questioning, and this happens again and again. That is one. The other is, I was looking at his poem about wonderment, Vismad. And in that, I was really struck by the diversity of experiences that he is dealing with. And in that, he begins to look into the darkness of the cosmos, which is inscrutable. And then he creates metaphysics, which is understandable relationship with that cosmos. And then he comes to the third level, which is, as you very rightly pointed out in his discussion with the Siddhas, it becomes even clearer, is that he says, Vismad ji, Vismad ped. Wondrous is the living, and wondrous is the differences, that the diversity that exists within the diversity of life, the differences. For him to celebrate the differences, for him to also look at the wonderment of this entire living manifestation of myriad shades of life, is just absolutely amazing. And his, as you very rightly pointed out, his engagement with that which is right there, which is the physical sort of grind that you have to deal with. For instance, when he goes on to say, Vismad pug, Vismad pog. Wondrous is this hunger. Now, I suddenly find that the wondrous is no longer a static word in that poem, in that shabda. Wondrous becomes highly nuanced. Wondrous is the hunger, and wondrous is the opulence that gets created. I mean, that kind of thing, when he is talking about Vismad dur, Vismad nede, Vismad dur.
Would you like to hum that poem for us?
Vismad nad. Vismad nad, Vismad ved, Vismad ji, Vismad ped. Vismad rupa, Vismad ranga. Vismada, Vismada, Vismada Jiya Vismada Peda. And then when he says, Vismada Pukha Vismada Poga, Vismada Sanjoga, Vismada Viyoga, Vismada, Vismada, Vismada. There's a long poem. I'm scared of sort of, making mistakes here and there. So whatever little that I remembered, I just sung.
But it brings out, the sense of wonderment.
Absolutely.
At creation, which was a constant thing. Like he was like a person walking around, constantly looking at nature, constantly looking at creation, and singing deeply devotional and spiritual praise of the Creator, of the Supreme Being. So that's why the Guru Granth Sahib and his writings are not a set of teachings, not a do's and don'ts, but they're just deep devotional poems in praise of creation and the Creator and nature. The entire Barama that he has written in praise of nature is some of the best nature poetry. And of course, so it's a very, very immediate concern today. I mean, protection of environment. And there he is, even then, 550 years ago, talking of environment and the beauty of nature and the value of it.
And of course, his Ode to Cosmos, his Aarti. The little story that you have about that, which I find absolutely fascinating.
I will come to it, but I want to end our session with that. So, I can't, I have to get you to sing that. So I have to build you up to that. Okay. So one of the things I want to build you up is, for instance, Guru Nanak's hymns are all set in classical rags, or most of them are and the rag is given. And that is true of the later gurus also. But something, could you tell us, as a musician, as this accomplished person who's been singing for so long, the importance of the classical rag to the hymn itself, the centrality of the rag in the writing?
Well, the thing is that I was, brought up in a refugee colony after the partition. My family settled in Delhi. I was born in Amritsar. My father lived in Lahore. And so there is a,
born in the Golden Temple.
In a street which was midway, we could walk to Golden Temple in about 3 minutes. And we could walk to Jallianwala Bagh in 3 minutes. So we had these two, seminal childhood experiences of sleeping right on top, out in the open, on the rooftop, and looking into the stars and being narrated stories by our sister, my mother's sisters, and they will be telling us stories about Guru Nanak and about other gurus and about very stories of valor and so on and so forth. And early morning around 4:30, 5, there would be this very gentle sort of music which will float in from the Golden Temple, and we will be hearing. It was very soft. The amplification was not there those days. And we are listening to that music, and it is all classical music. That was our formative, introduction to Gurbani. And of course, my father, who was subsequently sort of, he was a scholar of Gurbani, and he was a good friend of your father. And,
yes.
and both of them are doyens of Punjabi literature. And he was very fond of the classical music, and so we got introduced to. We got introduced, for instance, to Bhai Santa Singh, who passed away in 1985. Sajan mere रंग ले सजन मेरे. Now that kind of thing has stayed with me. My father had used this composition in a feature which he did for All India Radio National Program. Those days they used to have a national program in 1969, which was the 500th year. And today, you and I, we are sitting here in the 550th year. And my father was doing this, and I'm sure your father was doing something similar. And this introduction to Pai Santa Singh, this kind of music I've not heard. I mean, the way for instance, there is a kind of a descent, the way the sound is descending, it's as if, and it's a song of mourning. But it's a song which gently spreads on earth. It embraces the earth in a way in which I've not heard much of modern renditions of Gurbani doing. So this stayed with me, and then there were ragis like Pai Suman Singh, then there were ragis Pai Gurcharan Singh, Pai Avtar Singh, Gurcharan Singh. These were just amazing, formative sort of influences. And the other influence that I had at that time was the whispered humming in an incantatory mode, which was not to disturb your sleep at 4:30 in the morning, 5. My mother, my grandmother, while they are getting into the daily chores, they are whispering in an incantative mode, a kind of a hum. It just gets in.
It gets in there, yes. And this is exactly, yes. Go on, please. Yes.
This is what has made us what we are, as, I would think that my engagement with poetry, my engagement with literature, my engagement with day-to-day life, my engagement with my relatives, friends, bonding, these are, amazing principles. When Guru Nanak says, emphasizes the importance of kirat, that is, how do you translate that? Kirat and Naam and sharing. My God, this wouldn't have been possible but for this larger idea of community that is individually alive as also collectively alive. Amazing.
Exactly. You have actually brought everything together, Madanji, because all these things that you said, for instance, the origin is all in Kartarpur.
Okay.
You see, when Guru Nanak had been on the road for 20 odd years, and then he came and settled down and spent the last 18 years of his life on the banks of the Ravi at Kartarpur, which we have heard recently because of the Kartarpur corridor. There he became a householder. He took off the robes of a traveler, wore the clothes of a householder, and farmed the land. And a community gathered around him, like you are saying. And this was a community, it was not a monastic order. It was a community of farmers, cobblers, tailors, all sorts of Hindus, Muslims, all sorts of people and including from the so-called lower professions, and they all would sit together and they would sing, as you have said, the thing early morning, the Japji, the Sodar and the Soila in the evening. And that means all these hymns were already written and ready. And then that's where the essence of his philosophy was given a practical shape. You see, Sangat and Pangat. Sangat was sitting together of people who were from different castes and listening to the word of God, not, the Bani, the message. And Pangat was sitting together to eat the traditions of Langar, which are still to be seen today all around the world. And there he started the third idea that was born there was of Dharamsal, place of worship. So in the sense, he Dharamsal became that everybody could worship. You didn't have to go to a Pandit or a Qazi to get access to God. So again, Pai Gurdas says, "Karkar andar Dharamsal, hove kirtan sada vasoa."
क्या बात
That in every house has become a house of worship. So he released religion from the hold of the priestly classes. And I think now, if we don't want to run out of time, I want to just introduce the ode to the cosmos, the Aarti to you. Guru Nanak, when traveling with Mardana on his first Udasi, went down to Jagannath, temple of Jagannath, the famous temple where, which is the massive procession of which has given the English word Juggernaut, where the massive rath comes out. So the priests at Jagannath used to perform a very beautiful Aarti to the idol in the temple at sunset. So Nanak ji and Mardana sat somewhere and did their own hymns, and then people began to get some interest. So there are several versions, but the version that I have read is then the Pandit of the temple came to him and invited him that, why don't you come to our Aarti? So he went there, and they were performing this Aarti, which a very beautiful golden salver with, silver and golden utensils containing perfumes and ghee and wicks, candles being lit and diyas, and bells were ringing and conches were being blown. And the entire very beautiful ceremony at sunset was taking place. And Guru Nanak sat through it, and he was quite unmoved. So at which it irritated and angered them also, and said, "What is wrong with you? And why are you not participating in this? And why are you not moved by this?" And that is when he recited his own Aarti, his own ode to the cosmos. And it is 4 verses. I will only translate the first verse into English before I request you to really take us on this beautiful journey. And the first verse is because Guru Nanak actually says that, the real Aarti to the Creator is already happening. And how is it happening? He says, the sky, the salver, the sun and moon, the lamps, the stars studding the heavens are the pearls. The fragrance of sandal is the incense. Fanned by the winds, all for thee. The great forests are the flowers. What a beautiful Aarti is being performed for you, O destroyer of fear. So he says that is the real Aarti, and please do sing for us the Aarti.
गगन में थाल रव चंद दीपक बने तारका मंडल जनक मोती तारका मंडल जनक मोती धूप मलयान लो पवन चबरों करे धूप मलयान लो पवन चबरों करे सगल बन राय उलत ज्योति गगन में थाल रव चंद दीपक बने कैसी आरती होवे कैसी आरती होवे पवखंडना तेरी आरती अनहता शब्द वाजंत भेदे अनहता शब्द वाजंत भेदे गगन में थाल रवि चंद दीपक बने सहस तव नैन नैन तो है को सहस मूरत नना एक तो ही सहस सहस पद बिमल नन एक पद गंध बिन सहस तव गंध इव चलत मोही सब मह जोत जोत सोय तिस दय चानण सब चानण होय गुर साखी जोत परगट होय ज्योतिष पावै सो आरती होय ज्योतिष पावै सो आरती होय हर चरण कमल मकरंद लोभित मनोन दिनो मोहे आहे व्यासा कृपा जल देह नानक सारंग को हो जाते तेरे नासा गगन में थाल रवि चंद दीपक बने
That is absolutely wonderful. And I don't want to say too much, but except to thank you for that and say to the viewers that, this is something, this Aarti has affected a lot of people in different ways. There is a story, not a story, it's a fact, of Rabindranath as a young child, Rabindranath Tagore going to the Golden Temple with his father, Debendranath Tagore, and listening to the Kirtan. And Debendranath Tagore was so impressed with his Aarti that he had it translated into Bangla, printed and set to music. And years later, there is another story that the famous actor, Punjabi and Hindi actor Balraj Sahni, speaking to Rabindranath Tagore, told him that you have written the national song, you've written Jana Gana Mana. Why don't you write a song for the world? And Rabindranath Tagore is said to have replied, that was already written by Guru Nanak 500 years ago.
Vah, vah, vah.
So thank you, Madanji, for bringing it to us in such evocative fashion. Thank you for being with us on this very auspicious day. And we will end here with greetings of this Gurpurab to all our listeners and viewers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Navtej Sarna. Thank you so much, Madanji. I mean, we've had so much of philosophy for the soul. We've had love. We've had music. The only thing left is really the prasad that at this point of time should be distributed to everybody listening. The Kara Prasad is pretty much, part of this. Thank you all for bringing alive such an incredible session. I think people have been sending and streaming in comments about just how touched they were by the music and finally being able to understand or unlock some of the teachings that you both, or not just teaching, the recordings, as you said, of Guru Nanak, of the wonderment that he saw of the world around us. And I think the lasting image that we've all seen in recent times is in Gurdwara, where at Langar, some of the farmers were feeding the police, the very hand that beat them. Sort of, in many ways, encapsulates the very philosophy that you both have shared with us today of love and of empathy and pushing back on everything else. So thank you all, and thank you all for listening in. Sorry we couldn't take the questions that you all had been streaming in. We just wanted them to continue this conversation forever. Thank you to the Kamini and Vindi Banga Family Trust for this beautiful for supporting this beautiful series. And do remember, the next session in this series of philosophies around the great faiths will be broadcast on the 7th of December at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. And meanwhile, do block your dates for December the 4th. JLF Brave New World returns to commemorate the war for Bangladesh with a special session based on Sandeep Unithan's book, Operation X. Till then, stay safe, stay masked, and stay blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you.